Welcome back, guys, to the fifth installment of Breakout with Visual Basic. So, a couple of housekeeping things before we jump into the next set of code or whatnot. I heard some of you guys talk about in class, some of the line numbers aren't showing up. So, to get that to pop up, and another nice feature I'll show you, go into Tools, Options, Text Editor Basic, Editor, and then these two right down here, you got word wrap and line numbers. Line numbers, pretty self-explanatory. That'll pop up your numbers here so you can refer to the different lines. Word wrap is very nice. In case you have a long line of code that goes off of this code view right here, it'll automatically jump down to the next line as you type. And that way you don't have that annoying feature where you have to scroll horizontally. So if you like that, go ahead and turn it on. If you don't, leave it off. We're not going to have too many long lines of code. Shouldn't be that bad, but I know some of you guys are working the split screen. You like to make your screen a little smaller, kind of like that. So that'll help with that. So one thing that you guys also expressed to me is that, so we got the movement working, but the player can go outside of the window bounds here. So we'll go ahead and fix that first. I know that's bothering some of you. So we'll go ahead and take care of that. So we'll go into code, and it's going to be down in the timer tick where we're going ahead and changing the player box location. So we're basically going to have two checks just like we do for the ball box. If it leaves the screen on the left or leaves the screen on the right, they're going to be similar here. All right, so I'm going to group it with our player box movement. So I'm going to put it up here. It's always good to group similar code together, or at least code that deals with the same objects together. That way it's easier to find. So we have if playerbox.location.x is less than 0, then we're basically just going to reset the position or not let the player move at all. So it's similar to this one right here, only we don't have to worry about a direction. Okay, but we will just go ahead and reset the player box location. So player box location. One thing I want to show you guys is that we can't just set a location X. For example, setting player box location.x to 0. If I click off of this and try and do this, it throws an error right down here. The expression is a value and cannot be the target of an assignment. So you can't assign each individual component or X or Y value a location or a number. It has to be an entire point. So that's why when we changed the ball box location or the player box location, we had to create a whole new point, even if we weren't changing the Y. For example, right here. Okay, we're giving it a new X, but the player box location.y had to stay the same. So that's pretty much what's going to happen here. Player box location equals new point. The only difference is we're now going to set X to 0 and not change the Y location at all. Everyone is using a different Y position, so normally you just put a number here, but I don't know what yours is, so we'll just keep it at that. All right, as soon as I click off of that, that error will go away. All right, so that'll take care of the left side. Now we need to do the right, which is a little bit tougher, but it's similar to how we did the ball box location. Me.width is the entire right side of the form, so if I pull that up, here's 0 in the X, here's me.width, whatever your width is. But since the paddle anchor point is on the left, okay, when the paddle gets all the way to here, all right, the width is here, but we have to grab this point right here. That's why we're subtracting the width of the player paddle. Again, everyone has a different width paddle, so this will work for everybody. That's another reason I chose this way. So if we have if player box.location.x is greater than me.width, which is the form width. Remember, use me anytime you need to access the form. Minus player box.width. Then, and same thing again. We're going to reset the player box location to me.width minus player box.width. Oops. There we go. Misspelling. There we go. Oh, right. Now, when I was playing with this earlier, this probably isn't going to look quite right. So you guys might have the same issue, so I just want to show you what's going on. So if I go to the left, a couple things are going to happen. The player box is going to stop, but the ball will not. There you go. So the ball kept going. So we got to fix that. So at least the left side looks good when the player paddle stops. If I come over to the right, uh-oh, did something wrong here. Looks like we got to do some debugging. All right, come back in here. Oh my goodness, I'm surprised it even took that. We only put in one value right here. When you have a point, you should have two values. So this whole thing right here is our x. We now need to put in a y. Player box dot location dot y. I just got done saying you had to have two values too. Oh my goodness. Okay. Here we go. When we go to the right, okay, what's happening here is it's kind of close, but some of my paddle is getting cut off. It's hard to see. So I need to, for some reason, need to move my paddle a little bit more to the left. And I think that's how Windows 10 is like showing this form. At least that's my assumption anyways. So what I have to do here, I'm going to come back in, and instead of me.width minus player box width, I'm going to subtract a little bit more so it doesn't cut off my player paddle. So I needed to change that here, and I need to change that when I set my new point as well. So I'm going to do minus 20 here. Okay, that seemed to work a little bit. Yeah, see, it's even off here. Okay, let's try value 10. It's a little bit of trial and error to get this to work right. Still a little bit of a gap. All right, change it to 5. There we go. Nice and tight. Okay. So again, we do have that issue where the ball's going to move. Okay, so we got to fix that as well. So the ball is stuck, and we're having it use the player speed right here to move. So what we need to do is put in a check to see if the player paddle is actually on the edge. All right, so we're going to get a little bit of experience here with some more if statements. So what we're going to do is nest an if statement. Basically, we're going to put an if statement inside of this if statement right here. So we need to check and see if this movement is going to happen when so we need to check and make sure that this movement is only working when the player is not on the edge, or at least the player paddle is not on the edge. So inside of here, we're going to do if playerbox.location.x is greater than 0. So we want this movement to only work when the player box is not all the way to the left. And, keyword and, we're going to group it with another check to make sure that its location is also less than me.width minus playerbox.width. Now, if you added that extra value like I did, I used a value of -5. I need to put that in here too. Okay, right now it's throwing an error because I did put in a new if, but since it's already inside of an if, it doesn't know to put the end if in for me. So I have to put the end if after this line right here of our movement. Okay, so if I do end if right here, as soon as I click away from it, it automatically pops in, spaces everything out for me, and we're good to go. That should do it. Let me go ahead and give it a play test, make sure we're good there. Okay, ball doesn't move when I hit the left side, doesn't move when I hit the right side. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started on breaking blocks. Okay, right now we have it so that the ball, helps if it hits it. Let's see if it hits it here. There we go. Goes through the block. So what we want to do is set it up so it hits it and changes the ball direction and makes the block disappear. So we'll go ahead and get that set up. All right, so we're going to need a check to see if the ball is intersecting the block. Very similar to where we have our check right here to check if the ball intersects with the player box. Right here we have our check for changing the ball direction. It's going to be similar to that, but the issue is we're going to have more than one of these blocks on the screen. So let's go ahead and set that up. So the easy way to duplicate objects is to hold down Control and then just click and drag from the object you want to duplicate. So I'm going to click here, drag, and I just made a duplicate. I'm going to select both of these using a marquee or a select box. I'm just going to drag and make a box and select both of them and do the same thing. Hold down Control, click and drag, and it duplicates both at the same time. I'm going to do the same thing again, select all four, click, hold down Control, click and drag. And one more time, make a box, select them all, Control, click, and drag. You can set up your arrangement however you want. I'm just going to be basic, no pun intended. Okay, so like I said, the issue is we have multiple block boxes up here. So what we're going to need to check and see is if one of these blocks is hit at a time. And for that, the best way to do that is to use what's called a loop. All right, so this is going to be your first experience with some loops in here. So where do we want to put our loop? Screw it, let's just put it at the bottom. All right, so make sure it's before your end sub here, because this is all, it's getting to be a pretty big function here, the timer tick, okay? So we need to do this check every millisecond to see if it's overlapping a block. So down here at the very end, right before the end sub, we're going to use a loop. Before I even show you what it looks like, anytime you guys have questions about things that we're doing in here, you want to look up how to do something different, if I mention that, always feel free to use Google. There's tons and tons of resources. So if you open up a web browser and just type in Visual Basic Loop and Google it, the very first one that pops up here, loop structures, usually it's MSDN. That's the reference to any type of programming with Visual Basic. If you click on that, it gives you a nice overview of how loops are used. Okay, so it goes through how the code works. Basically, you're going to use a loop to reuse any type of code, okay, or make iterations. All right, so we have different types of loops. We have while loops, do, for, and for each. We're actually going to use the for each. Okay, so if you get confused on anything that we do, you can click right here. Gives you a little bit more detailed information about what you can actually put in each for each statement, how to set it up in the structure. Gives you its different parts. So what exactly is an element that's in this? Well, you can read right here. All right, you need to make sure that the data type matches, so on and so forth. Tells you what each statement does. Then it even gives you examples right down here. All right, anywho, let's go ahead and get this going. So what we're going to need to do is create a for each loop. And what it's going to do is, so it's going to check for picture boxes in the current form. So we're going to need to use me, which references the form, and it loops through all the different controls on the form. So for example, it's going to go through all these picture boxes, even the ball and the player paddle and the labels. Anything that you put on, if we put in some more buttons, some more labels, whatever, it's going to loop through all of those different controls, and it's going to select all of the picture boxes. Okay, so now the issue is when I press enter, it puts in this next. Okay, so we need to put in our code between this, the for each and the next. The problem is we want to make sure that the block we're picking is only one of these picture boxes, the block. Okay, we'll need to make sure it's not the ball and it's not the player paddle. We need to put in a check to make sure that the picture box is not the player box. Okay? And we need to make sure that the picture box is not the ball box. Okay, because if that's the case, we're going to check and see if the picture box, which is one of these blocks, intersects with the ball. So we're going to go back and we're going to use this intersects with. Okay, so looks like it put the then at the end for me, but we weren't done. So now I need to use another and. So we're conjoining this check, and we have a third check, and we need to see if the block's rectangle, so we need to use bounds, dot intersects with, not width, ball box. And again, we need to choose the rectangle that surrounds that ball box. Okay, as soon as you hit enter here, it's going to put in your end if, and we have no errors. So make sure that's typed in right. You have 3 checks. Make sure the picture box isn't the player, make sure it's not the ball box, and make sure it's intersecting with the ball. Okay, quite a mouthful. So in here, I'm just going to show you that it's going to work for right now. So we're going to put in a debug statement. I'm going to go ahead and take this, copy it, paste it down here. And I'm just going to say ball hit block. All right, let's try that out. Okay, so I got all my blocks, got my paddle going here. If I hit space, check out the messages down here. It's hitting a bunch of blocks. Hit the top, hit the right, hit the block. It's going to throw that a few times because it's going through the block, and it puts in this message every single frame that the ball is covering a block. All right, but we're definitely going to change that. So we need to make sure that the block is destroyed each time that it hits it. So we're going to grab all the controls in the form, and then we're going to ask it to remove, and now we can just call the picture box that this for each loop is looping through. Okay, so if it's touching the corresponding picture box, this is just telling a command that tells it to remove the picture box from the form. All right, and lastly, when the ball hits the block, it's going to go the opposite direction. So right here at the end, we're going to do ball y direction equals negative ball y direction. So what this does is whatever the ball direction is, even if it hits from the top or the bottom, it's going to change it to the opposite way. So you just put a negative sign in front. So if it's positive, it goes negative. If it's negative, it goes positive. Because hopefully we know 2 negatives make a positive. All right, let's check that out. Make sure it works. Bam. Block disappears. Block disappears. There we go. All right, so you can kind of see there that the block was hitting it on the side. And right now we have it programmed just to change directions when it hits a block, no matter what direction it hits it from. All right, that's something that we might be able to change later. Haven't really thought about it till now. There we go. So we hit all the blocks. All right, this video is getting kind of lengthy, so I'll leave it at that. And we obviously got some things to fix. We'll put in some more things for the player to see, maybe a score, some lives, and a level, and we can change the levels around. So we got quite a bit of work. Hopefully this keeps you busy, and if you have any questions, let me know. I'll see you in the next one.